both of them on here individually. So first, I want to introduce Natalie Nicole Gilbert, who I have interviewed before. So please feel free to go to our website. It's a fandomthingpod.com. And if you click the interview section there, you'll be able to see my past interview with Natalie. So Natalie is a writer, songwriter, voting recording academy member, and the voice provider of the Natalie Synth V software Voicebank. So Natalie, welcome. I'm so happy to see you.
So good to see you again. I feel like it's been too long. I'm so glad to be back with you.
Yes, it has been a long time. So, and a lot has happened. So, yes, I'm very, very, very happy to see you. And then Robert, who this is my first time meeting Robert, and I'm very excited to have Robert on. Robert is a producer, a DJ, a remixer, and a Grammy nominee. So, Robert, welcome.
Hi. Thank you for having
Hi.
me.
Thank you for being on. So, this whole world of Synth V and voice banks and everything is so like, I don't know. I didn't know anything about this until you brought it to my attention, Natalie. So I wanted to start with that, and I'll start with you, Natalie. If you want to tell just, tell the audience and tell people that might not be familiar with it, like me, what exactly it is and how you kind of got involved in it as much as you can.
Totally. So the Synthesizer V software is essentially instrumentation music software. For those that are accustomed to working in music, it's not so different from Pro Tools or Cakewalk or Reason or a lot of those. For those who aren't familiar with music software, you might think it's something more generative like Sonar or something, but that's not what it is. This still requires the human component, the human creativity. The users come in, they write either brand new songs or they take a cover, they bring the instrumentation and vocals into that. And within the software, I am the provider, as you say, for the Natalie Voice Bank. So I am sort of one of the voices or instruments that they can choose as part of that as they draft their mix and create that song for the first time or remake it. So it's been really lovely, as many of those software users have shared with me what they've been creating in the software, letting me hear what they've made with my voice bank. There are other voice banks also within the software. My voice bank, though most of what we sent them was in English or Latin, my voice can also be programmed to sing in Mandarin, Cantonese, Japanese, Spanish. Some have managed to make it sing French, although I don't think it's programmed that way. So it's really interesting to see what they can do with it to create some really beautiful mixes, from what I have seen and heard. And Robert and I worked on this. The bulk of our work was about 2 years ago when we first worked with Green Tonics for the Synth V software. So we had a lot of fun pulling together a big batch of songs for them at that time.
Awesome. And then Robert, then how did you get involved with this with Natalie? How did that kind of happen?
So Natalie had brought the project to me, and since we had been working together on her albums and different singles and in music in general, she said, "Hey, would you be interested in working on?" I don't know if she used the word "hey," but she asked if I would be interested in working on this project, and I said, "Yeah, it sounds really cool." And so we had put together a song list of different songs and different styles that would be appropriate, and started recording them. And I don't know, it took us several sessions. Do you remember how long? Maybe a month or so of recording them?
Yeah, I think the way that it worked, we were really grateful that when we worked with Dream Tonics, they were, first of all, willing to accept a lot of our audio work that we had already done on my last 3 albums. So a number of those songs that were already finished, we were able to just pull the vocals out of them independently for just the melody and hand those off to them. But as I recall, there were a few more that they needed that we then, tried to crank out in our last few weeks of working with them. So the portion that we created specifically with them in mind, I think you're right, Robert, that probably ran around a month, and that we did the bulk of those last 15 songs in about 2 weeks, and we plowed.
Yeah, we definitely did.
Wow. Wow. And then if you are just joining us, just a little reminder that if you do have any questions for Natalie or Robert, please feel free to put them in the comments and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. So I know, you were saying that you did, some of them in like a couple of weeks, and I know you worked in a studio, which I guess is a little bit different, like a professional studio recording than some of the other ones that are done. Is that correct?
Yeah, so some of this, I mean, this technology began really in its infancy back in like 2004 with Vocaloid, as I understand it. And Utao is another very popular one. Dreamtonics came into that scene, and they really came more to the forefront around 2018 or 2020 and around the time of COVID, as they released some more robust features and voice banks, including mine, in 2022. So a lot of the early voice banks by some of those other software companies were rudimentary isn't quite the right word, but required a lot more of that input. That's sort of what I feared when I was first brought onto the project. Like when I was first approached and asked, would you be willing to create this voice bank? I thought it was going to be a whole lot of AEIOU and like 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I was very relieved to find out early in our Zooms that it was not going to be that like bit by bit, note by note input, that they were very happy for me to just sing full out. And I think that's one of the reasons why my voice bank in particular has a lot more expression to it. I'm told that it's one of the few voice banks, or maybe the only voice bank, that has a soulful setting on it, which is kind of fabulous. And a lot of people do use my voice for, ballads or jazz or pop or dance, which is all the stuff that I, human Natalie, also do. So it makes perfect sense that they would be able to use the voice bank that way too.
And so when you found out, like with the Synth V community, when you found out about that community, because was that like a new thing for you? Were you told in advance that there's a huge community around this, or how did you kind of discover that?
Not exactly. I knew that they weren't just beginning, but also that they were exploring some new features, and that they were trying to take it in some new directions and develop some new things. So from what I gathered from my conversations with Dreamtonics, they were looking to expand on the platform that they already had existing and wanted to see how far they could take that. And so I did get the sense that some of the ways that we were approaching it were maybe kind of new for them, and that they were very happy with the fact that Robert and I did already have this deep existing rapport, because he and I have been working in the studio together for years already. So for us, I think we were able to do things a little bit more seamlessly and a little more quickly than maybe somebody who just stepped into any random studio or was trying to record their best in their home studio, because all of this was happening, remember, against the backdrop of COVID in 2022. So a lot of our meetings with them were on Zoom. We were having to do pretty much everything remotely, and we would get feedback on the files that we sent them. But for the most part, they were not sort of in the room with us, even virtually. We were doing it, just Robert and I, kind of operating from the feedback and the notes and the criteria that they had given us in advance.
And then for both of you, I want to know, when you first heard something using the Natalie voice bank, what was that like? I know it might be hard to describe, but what was that feeling like, of like hearing your voice being used that way? And then Robert, also, since you helped so much with it, with helping with the production of it, how did that feel too?
And I
So
may be remiss here, Robert, have I sent you some of those links? I probably
No,
haven't.
yeah, no, I personally haven't heard it yet,
sorry.
but from I could speak from like a production standpoint, as far as when Natalie was telling me about how they were going to use it, and what you know knowing the process of recording, and I was like, wow, that makes so much sense, to sing a song, and to sing these songs and have these melodies and performances that someone could take and create something new from. It makes so much more sense to me than, like you were talking about earlier, with the ABCs 1, 2, 3. So even not having used the software, or heard the software, I already envisioned, while we were recording, what can be done with it. And I think that kind of helped with the direction, and also knowing, you know, where to take these songs, you know, as far as performance wise and recording wise, so that they could be used to the maximum potential.
Yeah, and I think for me, the very first time I really heard any of the end results was when one of our partner producers, Robert Amit, up in Seattle, had sent me an ad that Dream Tonics had released on Instagram, and it was with somebody else, an actress, pretending to sing Amazing Grace while my voice bank had been used to render it. And Amit immediately sent it to me and said, "Is this you?" He recognized my voice immediately, which was funny because at that time, I think Amit had only worked with us, Robert, on maybe Easy on Me, and it heard my vocals on the song that we worked with Chris Sloan on, A Little Only Makes You Want It More. So he had not heard my voice nearly as much as you had at that point. So it's funny, like I can hear the distinctiveness in my voice, but I don't think of myself as having one of those like 1 in a million distinctive voices. So for somebody that I'd worked with on really only 1 or 2 songs at that time, to hear this and immediately recognize that it was me, and I'm not sure he knew how much we were doing for that software or what the end result was. So I don't think he had a lot of foresight into expecting this or keeping an eye out for it. But he forwarded it to me and said, "Is this you?" And then I played it for my partner at that time, and he immediately said, "Oh my God, babe, that's you." Like they could hear the familiarity of my voice externally, you know, before I even could, as the possessor and owner of said voice. But I think for me, the distinction is that, you know, I hear my voice every day and I hear the contemporary voice. And the more that I've listened to these tracks, the more I'm reminded that my voice bank is a reflection of what my voice was like from roughly 2019 to 2022 when it was released. So you wouldn't think that a voice changes a lot in 2 years, but you know, we have ups and downs, the weather, you know, allergies, sinuses, coffee drinking, all of that. So when I think of what I sound like, I think about my 2024 voice. So I think sometimes when I hear these takes that other people have made with my voice bank, it does sound familiar, but it almost sounds like a voice note, like a voicemail that I left somebody 2 years ago. So it just has a little bit of that nostalgia or age to it that I don't think people like Robert who would listen to it would maybe feel that same distance from it, not reflecting me today. To them, it would probably just sound like it's the everyday now.
It's, you know? Yeah, for sure. That's exactly it. And it's funny how you were describing that, because from a producer standpoint, I'm like, I know exactly what she's talking about in that sense. But your voice, your performance voice, it's you. Like, you know, when you hear all of your stuff, you could listen to your whole catalog, or any artist, you know, that we love, and like you listen to the catalog, you're like, oh, okay, I could hear differences from, you know, a 10-year difference maybe, but from year to year, a couple years, there's not so much of a difference. More of the difference, I would say, and you're really, really good at this, is changing those genres and being able to sing something that's like a jazz song or a pop song or a ballad, or, you know, something that's, you know, a gospel or soulful in that sense. So those are the changes that I hear in your voice, more so than like the change of your voice, or the, you know, the maturity of your voice.
Yeah, and I think maybe some of that does stem from my prior radio experience too, and knowing like there's a very specific way that soul sounds and a very specific way that pop and dance sounds. And you and I have been, you know, so blessed to work on such a wide breadth of genres over the course of my catalog that you've helped me record, from EDM and rock and jazz, like pure jazz, down to, you know, more straight line pop or soul influenced pop and power ballads. So you're right. Like I can think of a few times in studio with you. And when I think about some of the songs we gave to the voice bank, I know that one of them was when we recorded Vanishing, the Mariah Carey cover. And I mean, any vocalist, it feels a little brave to go into the studio and do a cover of Mariah Carey. You're going to be compared. And at least, you know, I chose one of her lesser known songs. It's not like I did, you know, Dream Lover or something like that. But even
And
so,
and no whistle tones, so you were good.
yes, we kept it in my range. I have a pretty wide range on the average day, but I remember the day we recorded that and just seeing your face, Robert, because most of the time you know what I'm capable of, and you know when to kind of push me or when to just let me take a rest. But something about your face that day was like, wow, okay, we're gonna do that today. Here we go.
Yeah, because it's one of the, soul, like gospel soul is something that you either have it or you don't. It's not one of those things that it can be taught, but you have to kind of grow up with it to really understand. And it's like, I guess, jazz or something else where the intervals are a certain way and the performance is a certain way, and just knowing those details as a performer is special. It's not everybody can do that.
And I love to live in that space, and to give it that human touch. I like to make stuff feel as live as possible. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love recording with you so much, Robert, is that you're perfectly comfortable in the acoustic and the rich harmony space, but you're also perfectly comfortable with electronic and beats and everything in that space, full spectrum. And there are so many people, understandably, who are really one or the other. Just like there are a lot of vocalists or instrumentalists who either want to do all sight reading and all sheet music or all improvisation. And not a lot of people bridge that gap or work on both sides of that equation. And we've been it's been phenomenal over the many years I've worked with you. We've been able to work on these big orchestral covers and these American songbook songs from like Stevie Nicks, but also more contemporary stuff from Harry Styles, and a number of my originals that were either, bubbly songs about death somehow that worked on ukulele, or thanks, Dana, or these rich piano ballads that have kind of been seasoned with the tenure of having performed them live for a while before we recorded this latest remastered version of them. So I think a lot of the reason why the Natalie Voicebank is as versatile as it is not only those genres, like you were saying, Robert, and my knowledge firsthand of those genres, but also just that we in that studio and as a team had also recorded so many of those genres in big and quiet and robust and simple ways, sometimes with just one piano or one guitar, but other times with live string players or live pre-recorded, but like
Right.
human string players, not just MIDI. So we really had the full benefit of exploring all those dynamics together, and I think the package that we created for Dream Tonics really reflected all of that spectrum.
Well, I want to turn now how you got involved sort of in recognizing the fandom around this too. And I know a lot of that came from, Natalie, you were watching something on YouTube and you commented, and then people were able to put the human to the voice, so to speak. And then can you speak a little bit about that, how it kind of grew from there, of you discovering the fandom around this?
Yeah, so I mean, to be honest, life has been kind of crazy since this was released in October of 2022. I've moved a few times, I've traveled a lot of places. And of course, COVID was still winding down here in Hollywood. We also had the writer's strike and the actor's strike. So I've definitely been kept on my toes, and I had not really checked in a lot on what had happened with the software that we worked on 2 years ago. But I was talking to somebody just earlier this month, a couple of my friends, and saying, oh yeah, I worked on, this software where my voice is technically AI, but people can employ it as an instrument for original creations that they completely compose from scratch and develop. And I thought of that video that Amit had forwarded me from Instagram. I was sure somewhere I would find it on YouTube. So I pulled it up, just being like Amazing Grace, Synth V software, whatever tag words I used, whatever search words I used. And it came up. But this time when I pulled it up, it had 74,000 views on it, which is considerably more than it had the last time that I had seen it when they just released that video on Instagram. So then I got curious, and I was like, oh, there's, over 100 comments here. Let's see what they say. And they were like, oh, Natalie is my favorite voice bank. Or I just got the latest Natalie update. I like the original Natalie better. And it was so surreal to see all of these people who I could tell from their remarks, had no idea who the human voice provider was, but they're all referring to her as her, like a car, you know, and talking about their favorite features of my voice. Oh, Natalie is so expressive. I love how bright her vocals are. And it was all those same comments that I, as a human, have heard, but now I'm hearing them for my disembodied voice bank in the software. So it was kind of odd to see that like there was this same appreciation for my vocal skills, even when they didn't know my backstory or my bio or all that, because clearly they didn't know who I was. So I couldn't resist. I logged into YouTube under my artist profile, and I just went to like one remark. I can't even remember what the comment was, but I just replied to that one person. And I just said, yeah, you know, I hardly recognized my own voice the first time too. Somebody had to send it to me, and my partner had to say, yeah, that is you, you know. And then I kind of forgot that I made that remark. And, you know, I I got an email alert that somebody had replied to it going, oh my gosh, it's so great to meet you. What an honor. You and your family should be so proud. But then, you know, I think I read that in an elevator and I forgot to reply to that or look at that too. But then a few days later, suddenly I started getting this influx on my social media of users whose profile bios said synth producer on them. A lot of them had beautiful avatars as their avatar picture of visual sketches. And I started to see a trend like, oh, wait, where is this coming from? And then I thought back to that YouTube comment and I thought, oh, none of them knew who I was. And I have outed myself, but not realizing, you know, like, I could tell the people in the comments didn't know who I was, but, you know, Dreamtonics had asked me for my permission to name the voice bank after me. So, I mean, granted, they didn't name it the Natalie Nicole Gilbert voice bank. They just named it Natalie. And I think if they'd even named it like Natalie Nicole, people would have figured it out a long time ago. But, you know, the better part of 2 years have gone by and the users of the software knew there was a human behind it, but it's quite commonplace in that community for voice providers to not reveal themselves. Like some choose to and some don't. And it's kind of left open-ended up to us. And I did say a little something about working in partnership with them at the outset. But like I say, in the intermittent time, life just got busy. The pandemic was winding down. The strikes were winding up. And it just kind of escaped my notice that all of this attention had expanded and my voice bank had become so popular within the software user base. So like I don't think of myself as being like a default voice for anything, but there are ways in which it's almost like the person who is the Siri voice revealed themselves and it wasn't known from the outset, you know.
And then though you also saw the community or interacted with the community a lot and kind of embraced that. And I think, you know, sometimes that doesn't happen when people have a fan base at all. Why did you choose to embrace that and to really, you know, kind of make them feel welcome?
First of all, there was curiosity for sure, you know, like, because I like a message in a bottle. Robert and I created our portion of that voice bank and kind of sent it off into ether at the software company. And then we weren't really sure what different ways it might be used or who those users would be. So it was really interesting to see in all that time, now 2 years in, what people have been creating with my voice. It's like handing them a color palette and seeing what visual art they've created. In fact, many of them had also created visual art related to the voice bank, because my voice bank is what they call mascotless. I had a couple of letters assigned as my voice bank logo, but not like a human personified visual image the way that some other voice banks do to kind of affiliate with that voice bank. So in lieu of that, many of the users had designed their own, and they are very, I mean, not only are they talented at music, but they're very talented visual artists. So my graphics guy just this weekend pulled just a few of those, not even all of them, into a Twitter banner graphic for me so that I could start sharing that with followers. But as for getting to know them, I think I saw a lot of commonalities between the users and myself. Not only that, like Robert and I, you know, we came up playing with all of the music technology available to us in our youth, and, you know, have continued to play with new technologies as they develop, and seeing how important that is for, you know, future music makers to get their start in whatever software is available to them. And this is so much more robust than, you know, a lot of things that Robert and I had when we were 20 or younger. But then also I saw a lot of people in that community also shared a lot of things in common with me. I have learned in recent history, I identify as being neurodivergent. So like seeing that there was so much neurodivergence in that community. There's a lot of found family and LGBT people, visual artists, obviously musicians and songwriters and audio, you know, music producers. So I saw a lot of those same qualities that I have in a lot of these people that were, you know, now that they knew who I was, they were taking the time to say hello and share what they created with me. And it's just been lovely to get to know them as people and as an artist, and also to see how they collaborate together. Because I think, you know, as Robert and I were talking about earlier, and I think we touched on even here while we've been live, AI can be scary for a lot of people. And people assume that AI can only be generative, that it can only be this like put the human out of the equation, let the machine do all the fun parts sort of thing. But this software with Dream Tonics and Synth V is really just a tool. It's just a paintbrush. It's just a palette. And it still requires that human component. And that's the big difference. And that's the kind of AI I can really get behind, like where it helps you unlock your potential, where it helps you create more and bring your full self to it. Bring in a voice. You know, a lot of the people using this, they're scattered all over the world, but most of them probably would never have messaged me on Twitter privately and been like, could you be the singer for my song that I composed in my bedroom? You know, but through the advent of this software, they can, in essence, hire me to be their demo singer without my having to sign on, you know. And seeing the ways that they've used that, I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful to be that voice that they can utilize because they're writing absolutely beautiful music when they are using my voice bank.
And we have a question from, this is Carla. Hi, Carla. So have you found there to be any downsides to participating in this project?
It's weird. And Robert, you may be able to speak to this too, but like I wouldn't say it's downsides. I think it's mostly just encountering the awareness that there is that stigma for AI, especially right now with all the conversations that have been going on surrounding the strikes with the WGA writer strike, the SAG-AFTRA actors strike. The word AI here in Hollywood and in a lot of creative spaces is just treated like such a dirty word. And a lot of that is because people much older than Robert and I that haven't got their head around it yet. And for them, it's sort of like a Napster back in the day. You know, it's like, oh, this is a scary thing. And I want to avoid it as long as I can, without recognizing, we should have learned from Napster, that the better approach is to look at which parts of that new innovation serve us and which things we can use to our benefit. So I think the disadvantage could be, I will foresee, you know, some of the Synth V software users have asked me if I, human Natalie, would be willing to cover one of their original songs that Voicebank Natalie was used to record, which I absolutely support. Having heard those, I've started to learn some of them and practice with some of them. So I foresee that I could do that. And if I do, and I were to go to the Recording Academy, Robert, I'm sure you can get a sense, as I would, what some of those people would say, because the minute that they know that AI was any part of that equation, some of them would bristle at that, even though it required the human songwriter and composer at the outset. And what I would submit to the Academy would be a human recording that we do in studio. I think it would make some of my peers nervous to know that AI came in, even in an intermediate portion as part of that process. So I think for me, that's probably been, downside isn't quite the right word, but it's like a consideration. It's something I have to be cognizant of. And I think even though I didn't fully understand all the ways that the software would be implemented when we were recording it, I think by the nature of being the voice provider of a voice bank, I sort of have to be mindful that I am now a representative for that part of the AI equation. And I've sort of taken the onus on myself to try to be an advocate for that and be an advocate for this community to make sure that they have a safe space to continue creating with this software and helping to erase that stigma and that misunderstanding from the larger music community.
Yeah, and I think too, one of the points to follow up on what you just said is you gave permission for Dreamtonics to use your voice for
Yes.
this bank, knowing exactly how it was going to be used. And I think knowing that too, it lifts a lot of the the negative like stigma off of it. And two, knowing like, oh wow, like these creations are really beautiful, and you're hearing different things and what people could come up with, and using it as a tool, like you said, as if when MIDI came about, or any other software. I think is it's good to accept what's moving on, and how technology is moving forward, but also knowing like, well, you did give permission, so we have to be aware of when AI takes things that doesn't have permission. It's a different can of worms than when companies are doing it the right way and asking permission, and everything is laid out that way so that everyone is protected, so to speak.
I'm so glad you said that, Robert, because you make an excellent point. And I would not want to forget that part of the discussion. You're absolutely right. I gave consent. And I think so much of what we're seeing in headlines right now is that like this voice actress had somebody imitate her voice without her consent, or somebody sampled somebody without consent. But, we did know what we were getting into, and we specifically tried to give them material that was robust enough to give them the fullest use of that we could. So consent is absolutely the key ingredient there. And I think that is very much what sets it apart, both the human component on the composing and the human component with consent being given by the voice provider like me in the software.
Yeah, and it sounds, because I'm one of those people that, and we've talked a lot about AI on my podcast, and not. I'll be upfront, not good, not on the positive side. But I know, like for me with editing the podcast, it's just me. I'm an independent creator, and I do use some AI type software to do a quick edit to take out like the ums and a lot of the pauses and duplicate words to save myself time. And so I know there can be a place for it, but I think, and I think where the fear comes from, and this is why I think this is so interesting to me, learning about this, is there is that human component and there is that consent component. And I think with the human component, you have the creativity still there. So there's still something that you're creating. There's still a part of the human soul and the human empathy and all our range of emotions that is going into this. So it's not like just someone is just like typing in the words, create a song like this, and then leaving it. At least that's the impression that I've gotten. And so that's what's so interesting about this and exploring it from my side, because I'm so new to this, is that it kind of reminds me in a way of like, when people use samples of songs in a song, it's kind of reminds me of that. And so I'm wondering then, did that kind of like, when you're exploring all these different songs that are used with the Natalie Voicebank, and you're exploring all these different projects and you're listening to them, did that give you a deeper appreciation for yourself as an artist then as well? And then I know you haven't listened to them yet, Robert, but then working on that and hearing from Natalie after Natalie answers, just did it give you a deeper appreciation for what you do too?
Yeah. I think one of the things I started, as I start to think not only about the ways that users could use it, but how can I use this software? Because I recently had the privilege of downloading my own voice bank and downloading the software just to begin tinkering with it, to get a view into how it's used practically and logically. And immediately I began to feel like, for me, I have a very odd privilege in that I can record songs that I write myself. And if I'm too sick that day with allergies, or too tired, or, I've lost my voice because I've had too many vocal sessions back to back, I could employ my voice bank to fill in for myself as a substitute for myself to create a demo. Or, you know, if I'm on a plane and I don't want to disrupt sleeping passengers around me and create a take, I could go into the software and create on the fly, literally, a demo that is using my real voice. So if I wanted to, you know, send something to Robert and say, here's a rough cut of what I'm thinking. Do you think you can add some beats for this or draft an instrumental backdrop for me? I could use that as a working sample for him. Or, you know, because we send scratch tracks all the time to people that we're working with remotely. I tend to send them early vocals just to give them a sense of my performance so they can play their instrumentation around that. We did that for Andrew Jocelyn and I think Natalie Bonin when we did, when we asked for their string parts to be played live. We tried to give them an early recording. And then once we got their instrumentation, we would sometimes go back and let me sing it out a little more fully with their strings to make sure the interplay felt as live as possible. But having that ability to create a scratch track really keeps that cohesion, especially these days, because it's so rare anymore for all of us to be recording in the same space. So many of those musicians we work with are up in Seattle or, you know, in other parts of LA where they don't have time to commute out to us. Maybe they're down in Torrance or out in Woodland Hills or something. Or, you know, they're simply traveling a lot. They're away from home and taking care of a loved one in a different time zone. So giving me that freedom to record my voice cleanly without my having to physically be on mic, but knowing it'll still render it with the same passion that I have by and large. And even like that, it even has breaths. It has an automatic breath mode and a manual breath mode where I can tell the software where to put the breathing in so that they can have that indicator too. I think that's such a powerful tool. And I recognize like not every user has their own voice bank, but there is the ability for them to create their own voice bank with Utao and some of the others. Go ahead, Robert.
Well, I was like thinking, wow, that's wild that you could actually move breaths like that. That's
Yeah.
to me, that's like blowing my mind. But I think as far as like a deeper appreciation, I could speak to the whole kind of concept of like AI or how it's being used in this software, and it's a sense of, well, you can do things that as a human that no software is ever going to be able to replicate, and you need that human component to be able to move things and to adjust them and to move breaths and to do those things. You have to know where you want it to tell the software where to go. It might give you like a general, you know, outline or basis of like, hey, this is what I came up with, and then as a human, like you go in like, okay, I want to adjust this, I want to fix it. But I think as a creator, as a producer and a songwriter, it also kind of makes you want to be even better, you know, and you want to do things, you hear things that are on AI. It's like, oh, that's pretty good. I could do better. Like as a human, like I could do better. I could do, and you could use that software to get, you know, better. And maybe better is not the right word, but more creative and more expressive in what you're doing. And I think, you know, there's definitely things that we do, you know, I was telling a friend one day, like, you know, all of us have a lot of similarities, but there's one thing that's not similar, and we all have a brain, but we all have different brains, and you can't do a brain transplant. So the way that we, you know, are in a certain moment in time and how that affects us, or how our you know, relationships affect us, or the environment or the culture, or any of these things affect us, is going to affect how we create music and create art. So, and those things, I just don't think AI is ever, watch someone that's really great at AI and I'll be like, I'm gonna figure out how to do that. But I just don't know if it could create it like that in that moment. And we experience moments and we express moments in a way that can never be replicated, you know, from, and then that might be getting crazy deep, but it's just something that I think as we oftentimes may forget or may not give it as much credit to, is the fact of how we are as humans. And sorry, my voice is getting a little dry right now, but how we you know, how these moments affect us and how we can express them. And you know, I think you know what I'm trying to say there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sorry, go ahead, Natalie. I was just you go ahead, Natalie.
I was just going to say, lost my train of thought. No, one of the things I was going to say was that I think Robert and I have a similar level of perfectionism, but we know how to optimize that in one another. We know how to keep the other person from going overboard on it. When I record alone, I tend to be, I will do 50 takes until I'm satisfied, which is ridiculous and will wear me out vocally. But I think the beauty of softwares that can create so many of those perfect takes is that it does also, speaking to your, what do you appreciate most, or what appreciation does it remind you of? Ultimately, Robert can attest to this time and time again, the things that we wind up landing on for the final master of a song that we commercially release is not the technically perfect version of a song that's so bloody lifeless and robotic. It might be, pristine on hitting every note without any blue notes or any weird modulation. The pitch is perfect. The attack is pretty great. But every now and then, like I can think of at least 3 songs on the Recovery project that literally brought me to tears in the studio, although Robert may not realize that they did. And I think that if you listen closely enough to the songs, you can sort of hear that emotion coming out. And it might mean that my voice wavers a little bit on that note, or that it gets a little breathier than maybe it should, or the pronunciation gets a little swallowed or cut off because of the emotion. But I think that's exactly what people keep replaying it for, and it's not something that you can always go into the studio knowing that you'll capture on the microphone. But in retrospect, it's those mistakes even. Like I remember when we worked with Amit in Seattle on my song Anomaly, that was sung beautifully by Jeannie Rock. I gave him my London demo. And in the London demo, I was still learning how to play it. I was playing it and singing at the same time, which often brings out foibles for me. I try to make the piano part easy enough that I can keep the rhythm pretty sustainably without interfering with my voice and vice versa. But I slipped on a note and I went into a minor accidental chord without meaning to. And I giggled in the demo. You can hear me giggle because I know I hit a wrong note. I didn't hit what I planned to hit. So I thought when I gave that demo to Amit that he would know it was a mistake, and that when he went to replicate it for the final instrumentation, he wouldn't include that mistake, but he kept it. And I was like, oh, that's funny. But then I listened to it and I was like, oh, I like that mistake. And then I took it to my songwriting coach at the time, Bonnie Baker, and she said, why didn't you put that mistake back in at the end? I kept waiting for that accidental note to come back in. And I said, oh, well, we can put it back in. So Robert and I added it again. We brought that same mistake back at the end, and it gave it so much flavor. And it was such an unexpected note because it's not the usual note that you go to. And every time I hear that song now, it's my favorite part of the song, the mistake that I would have taken out because I'm a perfectionist, So I think that, like Robert is saying, that sort of happy accident, the software isn't going to make for you. I do understand that Dreamtonics is working on a new technology called VocaFlex, where they're trying to make it so that the software can give different takes. Like if you tell it to do a vocal take, then you tell it to do a vocal take a second time, that second time will differ in some way, like a human. But I still think you're not going to get those happy accidents. You're not going to be as likely to hit that note you didn't mean to hit that winds up being your favorite part of the song, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, and I loved so much of that, especially, I think kind of what it sounds like, and a little bit of what you were talking about too, Robert, is there is that human element, the emotions. And I think music is not just the voice. Music is also the instruments, and also the way that is used and the way sound is used. And music to me is like, well, it's my favorite art form because of how much emotion it can elicit. And listening to some of these tracks that people have created, some of these songs that people have created, you can see and you can tell that there is a lot of emotion there from the person who created them. And I think also what you can tell is, and I could be wrong about this, so please correct me, Brian, but you can also tell that a lot of these artists that are creating this are people that have felt like maybe they couldn't do this or they didn't know how to do this. And now this is giving them that avenue to be able to create in a way that they've only ever dreamed about or only ever like kind of attempted. And they've found that community too that has rallied behind them and said, this is beautiful and it's okay to put your emotions out there. I don't know. Have you found that to be true then?
Yeah. Actually, there was somebody on my Instagram who was part of the fandom, part of the community, and they said, I never thought that I would be able to perform or sing again. And I have not had a chance to interact with that individual to see, you know, if they lost their voice or if they had writer's block or kind of what precipitated their feeling that maybe they couldn't do this anymore. But she thanked me for contributing my voice to the software so that she could continue to create and to sing and all of that. And that probably is not a unique experience, you know. I can't tell you how many times when I was growing up, part of the reason I learned ASL and used to interpret in years past is because one of my greatest fears as a vocalist and a public speaker was losing my voice forever. You know, you lose it for even a time. And when you make your money, a significant part of your livelihood from voiceover work and radio broadcasting and session singing and releasing music and doing concerts, losing your voice for any length of time is very scary. And I'm sure, Robert, you know people like I do who got a vocal node, or, you know, age got the better of them as they got older, or they had some vocal injury, which can happen so easily from a car accident or something like that with a seatbelt. Overnight, you can lose your ability to sing. And it is such a privilege to be able to use a software to fill in that gap for you to whatever degree you may want to do it. I would imagine there's probably even some hard of hearing people in the community who can hear some things, but maybe can't hear the detail to deliver some super clear pronunciation that might find some benefit to using the software. And then also a issue very dear to my heart, and Robert can speak to some of this as well. Robert and I have been working for a few years on a project restoring my mother's music. My mother was a professional pianist. And even though she played for so many, she played with Liberace, she played for weddings and funerals and classically trained, she got a master's in music education. She did not during her lifetime have a lot of opportunities to record. At least not, you know, professionally. There were lots of little, you know, videos and cassettes and reel-to-reels and things from various recitals and things. But Robert and I have been going through, you know, all kinds of old media and digitizing it and then trying to clean it. And, you know, often when she was recording, it was just a practice. So she might have an intermittent pause in there that we want to take out to kind of seamlessly put things back together. Or we did a version of My Funny Valentine in Summertime where Mom had played the piano instrumentally, but Robert and I were able to go back and present day long after Mom died and put my voice contemporarily over her music if we just slowed it down a little bit and put it in the best key for me to sing along with. So all of that really taught me how important it is to preserve those things because those people won't always be with us. You know, I hope to live to 101. That's my plan. It's a very
just 101.
A long way to get there, but I'm determined. But you know, if I was hit by a car again tomorrow, which is a sad reality I've already experienced once, it is a powerful thing for me to think that my family and my fans and my friends, my voice exists in a format where for their purposes, I could sing to infinity and beyond, you know, because I have now been preserved in the voice bank in a way that I wish that my mother was with her piano playing. If we could render all the songs that we know she did play in her lifetime, but we just didn't have the ability to record before she passed quite suddenly with only 3 weeks notice. I think for people, I can see so many like cancer patients who were vocalists or things like wanting to create this time capsule of themselves so that their family and friends and collaborators could still work with them after they passed, as long as they consented and, you know, kind of laid out some dynamics that they want. And that's, you know, this week I've also been thinking about that. Like, what do I want in my will to specify? My voice bank permissions include this and they exclude that. for my estate when I leave it behind for other people.
Yeah, that consent part, going back to that consent part of just being like, this is how I want it to be used. But I think with your mom and being able to sing with your mom's music there must have been just such a unique and incredible way to connect with your mom. So that's beautiful. And I think using it that way is so beautiful because you get to really connect on a deeper level, it seems like.
Yeah, and I remember, I mean, it's the little things, right? But I remember one of those songs that we worked on. It must have been My Funny Valentine, or maybe it was Summertime, while I was in the ISO booth and Robert was in the control studio where he is now. I remember just saying to him off the cuff, like, "Can I have a little more of Mom in my headphones?" Which, if she were there in the studio, I also would have said, and it just hit me as I said it out loud. Exactly as you said, it was like she was there in the studio with me, just asking for more volume from her, the same way that I would back when I used to perform live with my mom and my older sister. We had a trio, and so it'd be like, hey, can we get a little bit more of this person in the monitor, a little bit more of this in my ear monitor. In that moment, it was such a small thing, but it just choked me up a little bit, and I needed to take a few breaths before we started singing, because I was like, she's not really here, but in a way she is. And she lives on through me and through this recording and the way that we are preserving what we can.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Really, it just touches me seriously, because I just think music is so amazing. Music is so powerful, and it can change your whole day, and it can change your life too, I think, and help you a lot, and help you survive. And I think, and a reminder too, if anybody has any other questions, please feel free to put them in the comments. And I think going back a little bit to the fans and also the creators, but also the fans, I know that a lot of people in that community, I know you said a lot of people who are neurodivergent, and also a lot of people in the LGBTQI plus community, and a lot of people that have just felt like outcasts and outsiders. And why do you think it is, if you even have a guess, that people that have felt like such outsiders have found each other and found a place of welcoming and kind of like a home in this community?
I think there's such strong themes, especially in the LGBTQIA PK2 plus community, but also in the neurodivergent community. There is very much a mindset of found family, that there are some people in your space who may not get you, but then as you kind of find your tribe and find those other people with similarities like you, even if they're not identical, they might be separate letters in that alphabet soup or alphabet mafia, but they have those similarities to you. You think similarly, you approach life similarly, you love similarly. I think there's so much unity to be had in that. And I think a lot of people, from what I've seen, using this software, and just as they've welcomed me in the community, as much as I've been accepting of them and welcomed them into my feed, and my hello video to them just in the first few days had something like 9,000 views or something. But they have also welcomed me, and I think many of them have done that only knowing that I'm the human voice provider, not necessarily knowing that I am also in these other communities that they're a part of. But I think there is that, community has the word unity in it, and it's people coming alongside one another. And I've seen, even as I downloaded the software and I posted, hey, it's playtime, now I'm in and I get to see how this works. They started going, oh, here's a tip that I've used, or you might like using it this way. Don't forget to turn on this setting. And I can see that's how they are with each other too. They're not just doing that with me because I'm the human voice provider of the Natalie Voicebank. They do that for each other all the time, from what I can see. And they give each other feedback on how to improve. And, I think Robert can speak to this too, but so much of what we do in the music studio as humans is happening in a vacuum, in a silo. We work so individually, all the more now that we can record virtually and people can send us their stems from other locations. It becomes rarer and rarer that we have the privilege of working with other individuals. I'm so blessed that I get to work with Robert. So my earlier albums, it was just me recording in my bedroom half the time. And, you know, if I had a friend that wanted to add cello, be my guest, come on in. You know, one of my fans introduced me to another songwriter from New Zealand who happened to be in LA. And we said, oh, great, let's do a duet. And we brought people in as we had access to them. But these days, you know, having this ability to collaborate with people online, you know, even in video game play, to just be able to do so much in the cloud, no matter what your time zone is, and to be able to even do so anonymously if you wish to. I think that's an important component too, that you can create without having to always have your name stamped on it. I'm not afraid to admit that I have anonymous accounts too. And, you know, I haunt various boards and create various pieces of writing and fic and everything under separate names that I'll even admit to from time to time. Like if somebody figures out who I am, that doesn't really bother me. But there is also a safe space in knowing that what you are creating doesn't automatically have the emblem of your name and bright lights attached to it, that it can live and breathe on its own, like a voice bank or a piece of fic or a novel or a screenplay. It doesn't always have to have my name attached to it when it goes out to a competition or a film fest. It might wear a different name or no name at all. And I think that can free you in some ways to not have to think about how your family is going to receive it, how your best friends are going to receive it, and cloaking other people's identities in the stories, or, you know, who you wrote that love song for. God, if I had to own up to, you know, some of the people that I've, it's been really nice sometimes to hand my song off to other artists and go, you take the credit for that. And some songs that I never thought I would release, you know, that nonetheless got released. And I'm glad in the long run that they did, because then they get picked up for a movie to be in the soundtrack as the end title credit song or something like that. So I think the beauty in all of these things is that you dare to dream and you dare to play. And if it's something that you want affiliated with you anywhere along the way, you can stamp your name on it if you wish to or not, and have that freedom of kind of sandboxing it and collaborating with other people. And I think, you know, Robert can kind of speak to a lot of ways that collaboration can get you out of your shell and expand your knowledge too, to work with other people.
Yeah, I agree. And I think really you had touched on something earlier about the sense of community. And I think that, you know, there's so many things that try to drive us as people apart, that when you find like a common interest, you realize, wow, there's like so much I have in common with you. There's so many things that you know, we can do together because of this. And and it's great to have that community to be able to do that, whether it be, you know, the stream talks, or you know, music in general, like we've been talking all day, or you know, video games, or whatever that is. That I think as people, we really do long for a sense of community, and it's great to have the opportunities to bring people back together. And going back to what you were saying about collaborative efforts, yeah, you know, there's something that someone's going to bring that you've never experienced before, you know. And I think that that's, you know, whatever it is, you know, the knowledge of something, or a performance a certain way. And I think that those moments are very inspirational, and they're things that we can always take with us, and they influence us in one way or another, you know, whether we think in that moment if they are or not, you know, they do, you know, in, you know, I mean, I guess that could go back to the AI conversation as well, of like, those are things that it just can't replicate, you know, in a sense. But having the ability to use it so that we can find our sense of community or find those collaborations is amazing.
Yeah, and I think, you know, having my podcast is all about, you know, pop culture and fandom, and it was created from finding that community for myself and a lot of people involved, and I think that have been involved in the podcast, and I think that's something that I really appreciate about what you're talking about embracing this community, and, you know, them embracing you too. But so often I think people think of the word fan or fandom or fan art or anything like that as like a dirty word. And I think what people don't realize, and I'm not saying there isn't toxicity, and that's because there is, of course, in every space you're going to find that. But I think what people kind of miss is that a lot of that fan art and a lot of that fandom is a lot of people finding a way to be okay in the world and to heal and to find their place. And so I love that you have embraced that and found that to be the case. And I think that's just beautiful and can be rare sometimes. And so I wanted to, on that note, because I know a lot of people have created fan art of you. And I know you shared with me a little collage featuring some of the fan art that has been created for you. And so I just wanted to share that here. And this will be taking up the whole screen, everybody watching. So you'll not see us for a second here. Oh, it's going to show us. Never mind. So it didn't before. So that's the test. So it is hiding you, Robert, but
but Natalie has arms.
Yes, I love it. That's brilliant.
But I just wanted to show this briefly and just did people just send you this artwork and then you created this, or how did all of this, because it's really incredible that you kind of embraced it and is not only embraced it but created this whole thing from it. And how did that kind of, and then I'll take it off so that we can see you while you're answering. But
yeah, so each of those were predominantly created by different artists, different users in the software space. And a lot of them create that visual representation, that mascot, not only for themselves to use, but sometimes they'll share it publicly so others can use it in the songs and the videos that they make also. And of course, they didn't know who the human was behind the voice for the first year and a half or two. So they were purely going on the qualities of the voice to create that image and what they thought that person may look like, or how that person may appear for the specific song that they were curating at that time. So all of those, as best I can tell, were made over a long swath of time. And once, they realized who I was, they began sharing those images with me on Twitter. And I went to them and I said, actually, this is so gorgeous. Could I get like the highest res version that you have of this and scoot it over to my graphics guys so that I can create a Twitter banner, just kind of highlighting all of this and celebrating the work that all of you did, because it's just gorgeous. And I hadn't seen a comprehensive space where there was a curation or collection of that art. It was just kind of gathered per individual, per artist that had put it together to share it with other people and used sometimes in their YouTube videos that they post. But they were immediately, once they realized who I was, they were like, what do you think about all the avatars we've made for you? And I was like, what avatars? I don't even know. So they were kind enough to share them with me, and I was like, oh, and they were like, so many of us thought you were Black. We hope that's okay. And I was like, look, like I totally recognize the Voicebank is a separate entity from me. And I've heard from some others that, in some of their discussion groups on Discord and Reddit and in various spaces that they gather, that they've all kind of said, like, just because she's white in real life doesn't mean we have to stop drawing her as whatever skin tone we affiliate or whatever look we affiliate with her. And I absolutely wholeheartedly agree. Like, the whole point of the software is that they can create with my voice things that I may never be able to create myself, and although we did find it funny too, that so many of the avatars have clothing items that I myself do possess, which is funny.
Oh, really?
Yes, like some of them are not yet in that banner. I'm still collecting them, but one of them has like these beautiful lace-up heels that have like ballerina ribbon lace-ups, and I have a pair of shoes just like that in a different color. Another one of them in the banner has like a silver sort of opaline opulescent dress, and I wore something very like that to one of the Grammy events earlier this year. Only my version was a little more silver tone, but it had that like silk iridescent look to it, and very much the same like body sheath with a collar sort of look to it. So it was kind of wild that even though they didn't know who I was and all they had to go on was just my singing voice, that they still dressed her with so much of the same jewelry and clothes and shoes that are actually in my closet. So I've told them, like, kudos to you that like you could gather, and they often, as you see, also gather that I have curly hair. So it's just kind of funny, like how much you can gather from a voice or what they take away from just hearing my voice disembodied from me, knowing nothing about my biography or background, that they were as similar as they were, to be honest.
Wow, that just the clothing part is just that's just blowing my mind. I'm like, that's so that's really cool though, to think that your voice could even like project what your clothing style and everything like that. That's amazing.
Well, and for me, the biggest blind mowing, mind-blowing part, mixing my words, was when I saw that one of them had created a cover. One of them was kind enough to create a whole YouTube playlist for me. Bryn Synth, thank you for that. Created a playlist for me of both the covers and original songs that many of them had attributed to my voice bank over time. And this playlist has something like 288 songs on it. And it's not even all of them. It's just, what they had gathered. And just in the second song down in that playlist, I saw somebody had used my voice to cover an artist named Maluka. And Robert, you may know we have worked with Maluka in real life. Maluka is a friend of mine. I performed in concert with her live years ago, and she is very known in the video game space. She does a lot of video game music covers and original works, beautiful harmonies. We met while she was here in Los Angeles, something like 15 years ago. So she's very much blown up in that video game space. And one of the software users said, I know, I'll take the Natalie voice bank and cover this real life artist. They couldn't possibly have known, because they didn't know who I was at that time, that I, the human provider of that voice bank, knew this artist in real life and had collaborated with her. We just released a song with her last year called Knowing the Ending that we submitted for Songwriter of the Year for the Grammys. So that to me was wild, that even in our virtual space, somebody not knowing us had still united us and made us collaborate. And, that we wound up doing that 15 years after we did in real life. It is just crazy to me.
Wow. It just shows you it's a smaller world than we think it is too. And when you have that kind of connection, it just sounds like you just automatically would have it, even in the virtual world, without people even knowing that you had that connection previously. That's just, a lot of that stuff is just blowing my mind in a good way. I think that's really amazing. It says a lot about you as an artist too, I think, that you have so much of yourself in your voice and so much of who you are that people can know you without seeing you. Like know your personality and know what you would wear and know that, and know who your voice would go well with, or what covers you would do, that kind of thing. That says a lot about you as an artist, and it says a lot about the producing as well, I think too, Robert. So I think that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm like you. I'm like, wow, really? They down to the clothing. That's like just kind of that connection is there. That's pretty amazing.
That's really wild. I'm almost surprised that they didn't have like a producer drawing of somebody recording the Natalie voice, and he also looked like you, like and it will be wild too. I mean, now that they do know who I am, I'm perfectly happy for them to continue drawing whatever they were already drawing anyway. But I think now that the cat is out of the bag, so to speak, it's going to be interesting too to see how that does or doesn't impact what they conceptualize going forward. But it was very wild to see just how accurate to reality they were in so many ways.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask both of you, I know I've asked this in a different way, but I wanted to know, through this whole process, through recording, through producing, and then through interacting for you, especially Natalie, with the fans, what have you learned about yourself as an artist, as a creator? Natalie, I'll start with you.
Through recording for this project specifically?
Yeah.
I think one thing that I really learned, and actually it wound up being a very valuable lesson for us, was that I knew that Robert and I could work quickly and that we developed a rapport and we sort of had it down to a science. But until we had that hard deadline with them of getting them a certain number of songs and knowing that we were a certain amount of songs short of that and having to really steamroll through like 15 songs in 2 weeks to wrap that up. I didn't know that we had it down to that much of a science. That really taught me just how quickly we can work while still producing the same high caliber of work. And that wound up really working to our benefit. I think that same year, around that same time, was our first opportunity to submit for Songwriter of the Year for the Grammys. And we only had 6 weeks before that deadline to pull together the songs that we were submitting that year, some of which we'd already released. But in order to submit for the package, the Grammy package that year required 5 songs on which I did not personally appear with my voice. So we had to, find that 5th song, a song I didn't plan on releasing and stuff like that. But this process taught me how quickly we can work on something with a deadline, how unafraid we were of deadlines, and how we could rise to the occasion. And we were able to teamwork that deadline on time in a way that a lot of other Recording Academy members were not. And as a result, that year, I think we were one of only 62 people, 62 artists out of 15,000 that qualified that year for Songwriter of the Year. So it kind of elevated our sense of what we could manage. Were we biting off more than we could chew? And I think Robert and I definitely, we've grown to know each other's strengths. We've grown to know what's reasonable for us, what our ranges are, what ways we can expand that range. So I think this particular project really taught me a lot about that. And I'm seeing that even more so now that I'm seeing what users are creating with my voice and putting me in a breakcore song, or having me sing Japanese or Mandarin or Spanish in ways that I haven't fully done fluently in my lifetime yet. But perhaps I can learn how to sing an andante in Japanese, having heard my software version sing it, and I can learn it phonetically from myself, from the phonemes.
Yeah, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, what about you? How is it?
I think more what I learned is the fact that they can do all these amazing things with the software, right? So, but also on the production side of things, it was one of those projects that when you gather skills like throughout your life, and it's like, okay, my organizational skills have to be amazing on this, because there's so much work, there's so much detail to what was required by the company for the files and different things like that it's just, okay, it's really like those details are very important, because the slightest little difference changes everything, or it can be unusable because something has a little bit of headphone bleed or something like that in it. So just being very, overly sensitive to those details, and just being like, okay, I do have these skills and I'm putting them to use, and I think that was one of the things that it really, I guess I learned more so than, but I think like I was saying, from the learning standpoint, is like when Natalie was explaining to me how the software was used and what and how the songs can be put together, that blew my mind as far as what the capabilities of it, and just the what you can do, and how you can make different songs really from this. Okay, cool. Because when you record a song, you hear the song as that,
Right.
and then the end users, you don't know what they're capable of doing, and now knowing that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, well, it has been so much fun talking with both of you about this and learning about this, because this is so new to me, as far as like, I hadn't really heard of this at all before. So learning about it, and also learning about what sounds like such a great community around this, has also been really, really beautiful, honestly. But I do want to give both of you a chance, if there's one other thing or anything else you want to add that we didn't really touch on, and then we can go ahead and close out. Natalie?
How about you, Robert? Oh, you
Sorry, go ahead, Robert.
Oh,
Robert.
yeah, I'll go. I mean, like Natalie, and we had talked about this earlier, with the fandom and stuff. And I always think that it is very important for us being in the position that we're in to communicate with our fans, whether it's, we might not always have the opportunity to talk one-on-one, but having the opportunity to answer questions and to, you know, communicate in a way and be involved in a way, I think is very, very important. So if anyone, had any questions on recording or something like that, I know I'm opening myself up to like probably a million questions, but as much as I could, I'd love to answer those, whether it be in a setting like this, or if someone had some individual questions, please feel free to ask. I'd love to help however I could, and that's saying not knowing the software, I could talk to, the expertise that I do have, if that would be helpful.
Absolutely. And what an invitation. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you, Robert. And I'm sorry, tell me the starter question again, just so I make sure that I'm touching on the.
If there's anything else you just wanted to add that you want to make sure to get out there, just as a closing here.
I just want to say how proud I am of the software users. I think I wouldn't say that I avoided seeing how the software was used because of this, but I do think there is a natural awareness when you are creating a voice bank that people could use it to do myriad things that you as a human might not choose to do, right? And while I did consent to being part of the voice bank, there is hope that people are using it in good ways and not in ways that make me go, oh no. But I really have to say, from start to finish, everything that has been shared with me so far, I'm still making my way through that, 288 song playlist, but everything that I've watched so far in myriad languages, myriad genres, it's all work that I'm proud of, that I feel almost proud of as if I was there in the studio recording it. Because of the caliber of the production and the arrangement, the thought and the creativity that I can see was clearly put into those things. So, I mean, that's one of the things that I've really loved saying to the fan base and the software users as much or more as other things. And I think you were so right too, Erin, to talk about how the word fan can seem like such an extreme word sometimes, but really it's an enthusiast. It's a person who cares about the context and the background and the fluidity and the cohesion of this topic, and I don't think that we should attach a stigma to that. We are all fans of many different things, some which we publicly own and some which we maybe less so, some maybe that we lurk in the rooms where they're discussed, but we don't contribute a lot. But I think it's so vital to have that exposure to things that might fall outside of our experience. And like we were talking about earlier, to expand upon what we normally do in the studio or the normal range of things that we have. And I absolutely agree with Robert too. You really hit the nail on the head about that piece of having that direct link to people who are interacting with your media, whether they consider themselves fans or not. If they're partaking, they're engaging with it. And I love to be in touch with those people. And I know, we get busy and we fall off radar sometimes, but it has meant so much to me over the years that from the first time I went viral in like 2008, some of those fans that have followed me since then, as they've grown up and had families, they've invited me to their weddings, and not to sing, just to be there, or if I show up in their neck of the woods, we've befriended each other on social media for so long now. And I, do call out sometimes when I'm in particular areas. Anybody in Boston, I'm heading there soon. Anybody in the UK, I'm heading there soon. They'll call out to me and we may DM, and I've had them meet me at the train station and show me around their city in ways that have been so meaningful to both of us. And I love how music unifies us like that, like we were talking about with the community. Like, even though we had never met in real life before those moments, there are so many ways in which we had met because of our interactions online and interacting with the same media. We knew each other and we knew that was a safe space and somebody that we could trust. So meeting in person didn't feel weird, or, like when we met in real life, we picked up conversations right where we had left off online. So I think there is something so powerful about joining the fandom where they are, welcoming them into our space, but also letting them welcome us into theirs. Because ultimately, and, Robert, I think would agree on this too, we improve what we put out so much when we understand how that content is being used and what it means to the end user and the recipient and the person who's hitting replay 20 times, when we understand what moment it's meeting them in, or how it's getting used for a wedding, or how it's getting used for choreography. One of the songs we did on the Recovery Project, some gal out in Germany did a beautiful piece of choreography to my version of Vincent's Starry, Starry Night that I just bumped into on Instagram. She didn't tag me. She had no idea. I found it much, much later, like a year later. And, moments like that, seeing how somebody connected with something enough to create another piece of artwork from your artwork. Just like you said, Erin, it warms your heart to be a part of that, and that we snowball that art, that it keeps getting made. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who's been using my voice bank, and also welcome other people who might be watching the stream who had no idea until today what Synth V was or what a voice bank was, to not be scared to try it out and to get familiar with that community, because the people there, as far as I've seen, are wonderful people. They're kindred spirits. They're people just like you and me. And I'm very glad to now count myself one of them, now that I've downloaded the voice bank and software myself.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both so much. So,
oh no, I think Erin froze. Are you still there, Robert?
I'm here.
Did we freeze?
Yeah,
I froze.
yeah.
I froze. Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. Sorry, everybody. So we'll close out, and just if you just want to let everybody know, Natalie, first, where they can find you and where they can follow along, everything.
Beautiful. Yeah, if you are not already connected with me there, you can go to my Twitter, which is there.
I know it's hard
to make it a line. Yeah, on Twitter, I also have my link tree as my link in bio, and that can take you to all the places to listen to my human music. It can take you to all my other social media. You can find me on TikTok and Instagram. On TikTok and Instagram, I'm at NNG Music. And those will kind of take you to all my spaces, where I also try to keep you updated on where the music that Robert and I are recording is landing, if it's being used in film or TV and stuff like that, or getting covered by other people. I always try to keep people in the loop there. So I would love to have you join me and be a part of that conversation. Robert?
My Twitter is just my name, Robert Eibach. My Instagram is at THE_BACH at _Bach. And those are probably the Instagram I use more than any of the other ones. I am on Twitter, but I'm not super active, but I can be. So those are my two main social medias. Or you could put my name in Google, and it'll find Spotify and Apple Music and all of those as well. So it's just my name. Pretty easy.
Awesome. Well, thank you both. And then just to let everybody know, for our podcast, it's a Fandom Thing. You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. If you want to be a potential interview guest, you can reach out to us via our website. It's a fandomthingpod.com. And you can click contact us. That will shoot me an email, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. You can also go there and find like great past interviews I've done, including one with Natalie, and a lot of past episodes on there as well. We've done over 400 episodes and covered so many different things. So you can find stuff there as well. And you can follow us pretty much everywhere at It's a Fandom Thing Pod, except for Twitter. It's just Fandom Thing Pod, but we're most active now on Instagram. But yeah, and thank you to anyone who tuned in, and to anyone who tunes in later too. And I can't guarantee anything, but I know Robert had said earlier, if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the comments later, or you can message me and I can try and get them to Robert or to Natalie. I can't guarantee anything, of course, but feel free to do that. So thank you, everybody, and I hope everybody has a great and safe rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.